let's say you have certain luminaries that have come along in the last couple of years in this field, like Lou Elizondo and others, and they'll go in and say, we don't have anything that can fly like that, right? Now, as soon as that Tic Tac video came out, look at the record. I said, that's a Lockheed Skunk Works device. And since then, there's an executive at the Lockheed Skunk Works that's confirmed that. Now, members of Congress knows that's one of our covert anti-grav or gravity field propulsion devices. They've been around since the late 50s. That particular structure, we have documentation from 1967 in Pennsylvania, operational. And we have several new whistleblowers who have come forward who are Green Berets, who have been on special operations where that device has been used for surveillance. So now I knew this in 17, 18, when that whole brouhaha happened. And I went, no, that's not alien. And I spoke to the pilot, Fravor, David, and I said, look, Dave, this is ours. And he says, there's no way. I said, yeah, it is, way, But this is the problem. This is the big problem. If you accept that disinformation narrative, that we don't have anything that can move like that, humans don't, a priori, you're going to reach the conclusion that everything that those objects are doing and have been doing are alien when they're not. They're false flag operations. And this includes mutilations of cattle and people, abductions, human trafficking, moving arms and drugs around, all kinds of skullduggery. And so those criminal actions being done by this organization, the way they cover it up is to claim everything weird going on is extraterrestrial when it isn't. Now, I knew this in the early 90s, 91, 92. I had people come to me from Army intelligence and the aerospace sector that my uncle had worked his whole life in and said, hey, that thing that just happened, it's all over the UFO news, that was us. And then I had people come forward who had been on the man-made UFOs made to look alien, who were then doing abductions for their psychological warfare purpose. And, if you look at our documentary, The Cosmic Hoax, what we had there was found a document, a reference by Jacques Vallée, that he had received a document from, and he made this entry in his book in 92. But the document was from 1985, where it states that the CIA is using advanced tech to stage false alien abductions in Brazil and Argentina, targeting their word, peasants, for its psychological warfare value. It's in black and white. So then the question is, how much of what people think are alien isn't? And how much of it is ours? And how much of the phenomenon that's the Stranger Things kind of stuff, like the Montauk experiment, where they did all kinds of electromagnetic experiments and these weird creatures would pop into this dimension, and some of them got loose and ran off. I don't know if you know this, but that was in the 60s. So you have a whole constellation of weird, strange things. And people are not, what this is like, honestly, as a doctor, I look at it, is like if you had a really dumb doctor, and there are a few, I hate to admit out there, and you have chest pain, and he says, oh, you're having a heart attack. Quick, get the TPA, do this, do that. Of course, it actually is a dissecting thoracic aneurysm, and you give a blood thinner and you're going to bleed out and die in 2 seconds, or it's pulmonary embolus, or it could be dozens of things, right? What's happened with the UFO subject is that no one is doing what we call in medicine a proper differential diagnosis. And to even do the differential diagnosis, you need a fund of knowledge to start with, a baseline knowledge of the cosmology of what's going on and which is which. And this has been the biggest struggle I've had over the last 30 years is, getting people to understand that so that they're not ascribing to quote, aliens, a term I don't use, because aliens have become a wastebasket for everything weird, right? So anything that's kind of like a poltergeist or a Bigfoot or something from another dimension or something that the CIA is doing on their psychological warfare operations, all of that's called alien when it isn't, right? So I try to use very specific terms like an extraterrestrial biological entity, even with a craft from another star system, as opposed to something that's from a parallel dimension that's within space-time, where, you know, this gets almost into a theological discussion of creatures that could exist in other dimensions that aren't 3D, but with enough intention can become 3D. And that is, you know, gets into, you know, I love the story when I was at the Vatican in the 90s when Pope John Paul was the Pope, and I was meeting with his senior theologian, a wonderful man who got very involved in the UFO subject, named Monsignor Balducci. And I was at his apartments overlooking St. Peter's. And, you know, we started talking about this. He says, look, neither angels nor demons require flying saucers. And it was it was funny, but it was such a clear way of saying this. And by the way, he was a demonologist for the Pope and for the Vatican.
Didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole area of theological study. Well, then here now, fast forward to now, where you have people very close to the president, like Tucker Carlson, who has been gaslit, where the whole ET issue has gotten confused with the man-made problem. And that the overlay that he's accepted is the demonic extra-dimensional problem, which, of course, he's very religious, which is fine, but he's mixed all that together. Mm-hmm. So, and this is why people do it. The counterintelligence and disinformation operatives, like Elizondo and others, do it deliberately, because that's how you get your achieve your goal. The goal being to convince people there's an extraterrestrial threat, so that we can create a totalitarian global military system and unite the world, not in peace and some golden age of enlightenment, but in war, endless war. That's the long-term agenda. And it's about control of the human populace, but it's also about, quite frankly, vast amounts of money and power, because they would like for this to be disclosed in a way that redounds to the benefit, that flows to the benefit of the same military industrial covert players that have been keeping this secret. So that's what I call capture of disclosure. You know, it's just like big oil captured environmental research. You have capture of disclosure that's happened with these counterintelligence operations, most of whom don't even know that's what their role is. They're just doing as they're told, or being given partial and false information, and then seeing that the doors open so that they can speak about it. What you'll find is that the people who actually know all the truth about this will not be allowed to speak about it on large platforms. Like I was on Joe Rogan back in 2013 or something. And in order for him to get his $100 million, they had to take my interview out of the lineup. Right?
Yeah, I watched it in preparation for this interview. I had to go and find it. Somebody else uploaded it on YouTube, and I was able to watch it.
Oh,
but
really?
What was remarkable was that, you know, your story has not changed one bit since 2013. It's been this exact same thing. And so Joe Rogan in particular has seemed so embracing of this whole UFO disclosure thing, and has had many other people on his show, but hasn't invited you back and rarely speaks about you, which I find odd.
He's not allowed to. You know, I mean, this happens all the time. I was on a military show a couple times, named Sean Ryan. It's a Navy SEAL. And after I brought Michael Herrera, a Marine, on, and some other whistleblowers who had seen the man-made anti-grav and the man-made tech being used in criminal operations, and he had me on, and then another show with them, he and his whole staff and family got threatened. And so now I'm banned off of that show. And he feels terrible. I have a voicemail from him. But this is what typically happens. You can go on 60 Minutes if you tell half-truths and lies, because the major media corporations are vertically and horizontally integrated into this covert system. And if you actually speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you will be canceled. You will be banned.